Panda sits alone atop a shipping container in a shipyard. Upon smelling the air, he notes that roughly 3 people have been dismembered nearby. He can also hardly sense the perpetrator's presence, which might suggest that they can freely activate their curse energy. Panda reviews the plan that he and everyone had agreed on beforehand. They'd planned to leave the fighting just to Hakari, but the barrier, just like over in Tokyo Colony 1 with Yuji and Megami, split them up upon entry to one of those random spawn locations. After a bit more thinking, Panda decides to take off and rolls his cute behind off the shipping container to go in search of Hana. Once he landed, he looks both ways and sighs a breath of relief. However, at that exact moment, Hajime Kashimo walks right around the corner. In a split-second reaction, Panda plays a real-life panda, and initially this does work.
However, Hajime has an Omega-sized brain and summons his Gogang to his side to ask if that panda was actually a player, with the latter pretty much instantly confirming it.
Witnessing this happen in front of his teddy bear eyes, Panda was surprised to learn that they have that function.
Yet, before Panda really had any time to react, the ancient, god-level sorcerer Hajime had quickly charged at him and delivered a powerful blow to his torso, completely erupting a large portion of the stuffing holding him together before following up this brutal attack and completely electrifying him. Then, not done, Hajime, while insulting his strength, hits him with his staff and knocks Panda back into a container.
Having been brutally beaten, Panda notes that Hajime's cursed energy is similar to Megami's Nue, where both have electrified cursed energy surging through their bodies. With his panda form destroyed, the puppeteer begins transforming into his gorilla mode and strikes Hajime with a prolific, unblockable drumming beat.
Noticing a change, Hajime takes a defensive stance and endures the multitude of blows. He says that the attack wasn't too bad, but it wasn't great either, and follows up by using his staff to tear off the panda's right arm. Then continuing with his old school brutality, he throws Panda's own arm straight back into his face, completely blinding the defenseless bear, allowing the sneaky sorcerer to approach him for the puppet's right. Darting in, he delivers a flurry of absolutely brutal hits directly aimed at the panda's face, sending him shooting back into another container. As the broken sorcerer strolls up on the beaten panda, he calls him pathetic and weak before asking if he knows the current whereabouts of Sukuna.
Taken by surprise, Panda doesn't know why he's interested in him, but quickly comes to the realization that he wouldn't be a good matchup with Yuji. So, while trying to think up an excuse, he says he doesn't know.
Noticing the massive amount of stalling before answering his question though, Hajime realizes that he's indeed lying, and demands that he spit it out, as he'll show mercy if he does.
Having thought up an excuse now, Panda says that his uncle goes by the same name, so hearing it took him off guard initially.
Hajime, who easily figures out that he's still lying, doesn't appreciate being looked down on by the cursed puppet and tells him to stop playing with him.
Annoyed now, Panda retorts by saying he's the one being looked down on, and tells him to be aware of his sister, as anyone who meets her eyes, she tries to kill out of pure embarrassment.
All of a sudden, a massive horn is seen from Panda's nose as his body begins to transform and his head morphs into a giant Triceratops skull. However, in that exact moment, Hajime charges up his own attack and a lightning bolt appears between them. It's then explained that Kashimo separates the cursed energy's charges like electricity. When he strikes an opponent, so like all of the hits that he's landed on Panda earlier, it transfers a positive charge into the target. Then, when the negative charge that lays inside of Kashimo is discharged, it launches directly at the target without shooting off any other surface. This results in lightning that literally cannot miss, as it will travel directly to its opponent, pretty much taking away any need for Kashimo to actually use the domain, as this is kinda a sure hit technique in itself. Sadly for Panda, as the transformation is still happening, that said lightning bolt strikes and absolutely decimates Panda, mortally wounding him. Standing above the now fallen puppet, Hajime once again asks Panda about Sukuna's whereabouts. Oh boys, here's the saddest part, here's the saddest Panda chapter so far. As we flow into a flashback, we see a young Panda being beaten up by his big brother gorilla. The young teddy screams for his sister's aid, and an angry Triceratops marches over, demanding that gorilla cease the bullying. Yet, the young gorilla tries to say that they were just fighting like a dude from a game. Hearing that, Triceratops says that Panda should get the next turn to fight back, with gorilla being completely fine with it. Listening to his older siblings, Panda, looking like hella cute man, rolls up to smack his bro a few times. However, he quickly gets punched in the face by the latter, making him cry even more. Completely blown away with what she just witnessed, Triceratops then runs off in pursuit while Panda continues crying out behind them. Later on, Panda is seen holding a Santa Claus ball while trying to follow his older brother and his puppet friends. Not wanting him to follow because they find the training wheels absolutely lame, the fox whispers something in the raccoon's ear, and he tells Panda that he can actually join under the conditions that he throws his ball into the river. Initially, Panda hesitates, claiming that it was a gift from Santa, but after the two pressured him and seeing his older brother's grumpy stare, Panda tosses the ball into the river. Blown away with him actually doing it, the raccoon and the fox tell him that throwing stuff into the river is illegal, as it would harm the environment, before they ran off aiming to tell the police, which is who is Gorilla hanging out with? These are the worst puppets I've ever met. Gorilla rudely asks a saddened Panda why he threw his ball into the river, telling him that it was a precious gift from Santa. Breaking down in tears even more, Panda screams at him that he just wanted to play with his big brother. At night before bedtime, Triceratops berates Gorilla for bullying Panda, instead telling him that when other kids pick on him, he has to be the one to stand up for him. Gorilla counters this by stating that she plays with the other girls and wouldn't understand because of this. He says that he can never have fun with Panda around, as he holds him back and only ever seems to start crying when she shows up. Gorilla thinks that she's far too cushy on him, but Triceratops views this differently. She notes that no matter how mean Gorilla is to him, Panda shrugs off all the bad things and cheers up by the time it's time to eat. He literally doesn't have a bad bone in his body and believes that that's how brothers should always be. She belittles Gorilla by saying that maybe he's the spoiled one, as Panda always ends up forgiving him for his transgressions. Suddenly, interrupting the two of them, Panda then storms into the room with a beetle and shows it to Gorilla, who immediately points out that it's actually a Dorcas titanus stag beetle and screams while throwing it out of the window in horror. Before going to bed, Gorilla and his sister open their piggy bank to see if they have enough change to buy a replacement ball for Panda. As he then begins trying to sleep, he just thinks that an idiot like Panda would be fine with any ball. Suddenly though, in the middle of the night, a voice tells him to wake up. Coming out of a daze, he notices that both he and Triceratops are being led by a strange ghost man, who's obviously like some puppet version of Masamichi for real. But anyway, he quickly recognizes this figure as their father and asks where they're going and for how long, to which their father answers that there's no reason and that it's permanent. At that moment, a terrified Panda bursts out of the house, desperately searching for his big bro and big sis. Gorilla screams back for Panda and tells his father to stop. However, the ghostly man just tells him that that's enough. Gorilla cuts in by saying that Panda can't survive without him, since he's literally terrible at everything he does and will get left behind because he's completely helpless by himself. Not understanding what's actually going on though, the father tells him that they're the ones being left behind and not Panda, so be a good big brother and say goodbye. A confused Gorilla gets defensive, wondering about how in the world he was going to buy a ball for him tomorrow, and that he needed him there to talk to the shopkeepers instead of their sister. But sadly, after a second thought, he finally catches on and fully begins to break down in tears, not wanting to leave this world and his little brother's side. Back in the real world now, Hajime Kashimo stands over the bloodied mess of Panda's obliterated corpse. While prodding the bear, he notes that he didn't gain any points from him, before realizing that he probably hasn't found the core of the panda yet. He picks up Panda's head with his staff and asks once again about the whereabouts of Sukuna.